This video is sponsored by thingpenguin.com. I have started recording Marcus Ruiz Evans of California from the California Independence Movement. Is that okay with you?
I love being recorded, and I'm glad to be here with CALexit LLC and calexitnow.org.
And I'm Dave Ridley from NHexit. We're the New Hampshire, well, I'm one of the members of the New Hampshire Independence Movement.
Yep.
We all seek secession from the central government in a peaceable and orderly manner.
Yes, sir.
And this is November 8th of 2024 that we're recording this. And you were just talking about something. One of the reasons I wanted to start recording so soon is you were talking about something interesting, and I was afraid we wouldn't get to record it. But you were talking about some of the censorship that you folks have already suffered.
Yeah, it's ironic because we're the classic liberals in this space. We're from California. And I can remember going back to 2016 when we were saying, people censor you on social media. Like, we were growing 2016, 2017 very fast on Facebook. And then one day, like, our growth just stopped. It was like 1,000 people a day. And then one day it just stopped and it was like two. And then on our Twitter page, recently we had a Twitter page. It was like 5 to 7,000 people. And then that was taken away from us on Twitter. This is while it's X. This is under Elon, by the way. Then we launched another Twitter page and that also was taken. So I remember going back a few years and being the only liberals on planet Earth who seem to be telling other liberals, sometimes these channels are deplatformed and it's not fair. And this is before the Twitter files had come out. So other liberals didn't want to hear that. They thought it was all a conspiracy. So yeah, there was many years where the only people who believed us were conservatives. No liberals would actually believe there was censorship, although that there was. Ironic.
Yeah, I'm shadow banned, many times. I mean, what would happen is you'd go from there would be one day where I'd be getting 20,000 views per day on my channel. The next day it would be 6,000 and it would never come back up. And then
Yep.
4 years later, and again, this started in 2013. Four years later, something similar would happen. It would drop by another 30 to 80% and never come back up. And again, I was putting out the same content, but and then one day it got to the point where YouTube was they were threatening to just take down the whole channel, right?
Yeah.
So it goes back a long distance, and it goes back to both administrations, and both of the major ideologies are doing it to us. Uh, I would have expected better of Elon Musk. But even John Michael Godier has been messed with. He's completely apolitical. He's just a physics guy.
Uh yeah. And this goes, and it's really sad because everybody's being deplatformed, but at least the conservatives have some sort of collective consciousness about it. And we were liberals and other liberals didn't believe it, and even now they kind of don't. But this goes way back. I remember with the Dakota Access Pipeline protests, super liberal protests, right? This was during President Obama. And I was hanging out with some other activists, and they go, "Hey, I'm going to show you something really crazy. Come over to my house." So I did, and they go, I'm going to show you a Facebook page of the indigenous people who are protesting to try to shut down the Dakota Access Pipeline while President Obama's president. And I have 15 different links because I know all the activists. The moment a link goes live, it'll be shut down within 5 minutes. Watch. And I go, Ayla, that's ridiculous. That kind of censorship doesn't happen on the internet. That's a conspiracy theory. That's ridiculous. She showed me. The indigenous people gave up on the internet because there was so much censorship and so many of their Facebook pages were shut down. I literally saw it. They'd launch a Facebook page for 5 minutes and then it'd be shut down. So that was liberal indigenous people fighting for their rights during Obama, totally deplatformed. So if you talk to the indigenous, they're very aware of this, but you won't hear that in mainstream media.
the I watched a lecture on how CCP censorship works in Beijing and around China. Uh, and
Yes.
what the real takeaway I got from that, the insight was it's not that they don't want you, it's not that they don't want you criticizing them, it's that they don't want you even talking about them. More like they don't want you to engage on any political issue at all. And what they do want, they want you talking about stuff that's completely non-political, and they don't care whether you're supporting them or opposing them. They'll take either type of post down.
Um, sure, true. Um, at the same time, what I've been doing interviews with about 200 professors, I'm not exaggerating, who were experts on political science. And I was trying to find out why America's so divided and if we can fix it. Hint, 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 we can't. Anyways, I'm trying to get that book published. But one of the things that fascinated me was I'd go, in America, I would see news anchors say, this discussion or this idea is dangerous. And we make sure, what was it? Lester Holt won Journalist of the War of the Year award 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And he goes, telling both sides of the story is dead. You don't need to tell both sides of the story. You can pick one narrative and then stick with it because it's the right thing to do. And he was celebrated widely for that. So you fast forward that now to they'll only tell one side of the story because and reporters have said this, right? During the entire Trump administration, Rachel Maddow said, we're not going to show you the speech from Donald Trump where he won the midterms because that could contribute to misinformation. So we've seen a lot of mainstream shows say, I'm not going to show you what Trump said, and we're not going to cover him because that's misinformation and his ideas are dangerous. And so I asked some professors, I go, it looks like American media is saying, we're not going to show you these ideas because we think they're bad and upsetting. And we're not going to show you what he said because we think it's racist or sexist or whatever. And I go, and personally, as a liberal, I agree. But here's the thing. Why is the media curating the information that goes into the American mind? And isn't that similar to the Chinese communist methodology? I've seen interviews where they justify this. They go, look, the Chinese mind is very sensitive. And we have to make sure that bad ideas don't get into these people's heads because it could cause a lot of chaos. And then I see American journalists say, well, we can't show you Trump's speech. Well, we can't cover that. Well, we're not going to talk about that. Or that's a dangerous idea. Or we're not going to show you that half of the story because we think it's dangerous. That's exactly what the communist Chinese think. What the hell's the difference?
Well, and I, again, to be fair to the CCP, I made it sound like they take down a little bit more than they probably do. It's not that they take down all criticism and all support. People criticize the government a lot in China on social media. It's just that mostly what happens, again, as I understand it, mostly what happens is if there's a key issue that they're afraid will get a lot of people on the street in a specific location, then they will take down everything that's talking about that issue. That's how I understand it, and I'm probably exaggerating it a little bit, or
No,
maybe
no, I think you're
minimizing it.
probably right.
But there's been a great deal of progress and freedom in China, and I don't want to downrate that, but that's just how the CCP apparently does it. And the big insight there, I think that she had when I was listening to this lecture, is that it they will try to censor all discussion of certain things. And so I think we're seeing hints of that in the United States where
That's all I'm saying.
the liberals don't even want liberals to be doing things that aren't them, right?
Yeah, and liberals are not aware that other liberals are censored. So Michael Moore, who's a hardcore liberal, came out with a documentary 2 or 3 years ago on climate change. And he basically said that our existing policies aren't working. He did not say climate change isn't real. He said it's real, which is a liberal belief, but he just said our policies aren't working. He was banned from all network television for the next 2 years. You can date it. Go look up Michael Moore, look up his latest climate change documentary, look up when it came out in the news, and then you can notice how he just didn't appear anywhere for the next 2 years. They drug him out for the Trump election.
Yeah, I certainly, yeah, I noticed him yesterday. Someone had shown him talking about it, and I realized, yeah, where's that guy been? I remember thinking that.
Yep. Yep.
But
He said the wrong thing on climate change, and so he was booted.
but
That's
going
another example.
going backwards and clarifying myself again, I shouldn't say liberals are stopping liberals. It's not so much that liberals are stopping liberals. It's more like authoritarians are stopping liberals, right? Because you can be a liberal and very left wing and completely supportive of free speech across the board. There's people like that, and there's right wingers who are like that too. So I don't want to make it sound like all liberals did this or all liberals did that.
Oh, totally, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, it's
Jimmy
authoritarian.
Dore. Jimmy Dore's one. There's not that many, but there are some liberals who are awake. Not that many. I love them. I'm one of them, but there are a few. Very few. A small, strong, us few strong holding out.
Well, anyway, the there was yeah, and I think you're one of them, from what I've seen, and I really appreciate that because I listen to your podcast if you call it that, your show. Um,
I appreciate that. We try to
yeah,
be fair. We really try to be fair. And I also try to be upfront, like going, look, I'm progressive and liberal, but I don't believe in biting people's heads off. And I also believe in free discussion. And I don't want the government telling me and curating information for me. I'm a big boy and I can make up my own mind.
yeah, I saw an article the other day where someone was complaining that something had happened in New Hampshire, and they were saying, well, someone's, I think they were saying something like, well, they put an anti-Semitic symbol somewhere. Okay, well, let's see the symbol and why don't you tell us what the symbol was? Well, I need specificity here so that I can properly know exactly how much to ostracize this person if I interact with them.
Yeah, anti-Semitism, anti-Jewish hate is disgusting and has no place in America. At the same time, it's really easy, and I'll say this as a minority. Yes, racism is real. Yes, discrimination is real. It's very real. Police brutality is very real, of course. At the same time, humans are humans and humans and can lie. Sometimes minorities and other people lie about racism that they experienced. I've seen that just to get out of trouble. I've seen that routinely. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that's always what happens. Of course, I'm a liberal. Don't call me after this. Yes, I believe in police brutality happens. Yes, I believe there needs to be reform. I'm just saying human beings aren't always pure. And just because you're a minority doesn't mean that you're always going to tell the truth. Some minorities will make stuff up in order to save their own skin. I'm not saying that happens all the time. I'm just saying occasionally that does happen. And I'm admitting it.
Yeah.
That's it. And we see these problems because we can't accept responsibility for any of our actions as a society. That's one of the things that I've realized talking to all these professors and why I still believe in CALexit and why I work with Texas nationalist movement and why I love working with you guys in New Hampshire is I think we're on the right side of history. I don't see this country coming back together. I don't see people willing to make the sacrifices that it would take to bring this country back together. For example, I was talking to some liberals. Obviously, Roe v. Wade got overturned. We're in California. Everybody's freaking out. And I'm like, they go, we need to reach out to the reasonable conservatives who know that this is wrong to take away a woman's right. And I'm right there. I believe that too. But I'll explain the difference between me and these other liberals. And they go, we need to reach out to these conservatives and form who realize this is wrong and form a national coalition and we'll undo this. And I go, you know what? I'm a liberal who knows a lot of conservatives, and I could get you in front of a bunch who would be willing to work with you to repeal abortion. I mean, or to undo that. And they go, okay, great. And I go, here's the thing. Okay. They believe in guns. They don't like gun regulation. They believe in X, Y, and Z and F and G, and they kind of like Trump. So you guys ready to work together? Ew, gross. I'm like, you just said abortion was an existential issue, nothing more important. Get everybody on board. I brought a coalition to you, and you said, ew, gross, because you didn't like their other beliefs. Well, that doesn't mean it's really that existential a threat for you. An existential threat means like aliens are invading. Get
Well,
past all your personal and get together.
they think it's not. They don't think it's existential because it's not existential. There's no such. There's no ex. There. It's one issue. All one issue issues are one issue, and they're existential in the sense that they're existential if you're a woman who's been raped or has a baby that's in the tube and is killing you. You know, a fetus that's killing you as it's coming out or something like that. It's existential for that individual, and
100%.
that's important, but it's a really small number of people. It's not an existential it's not existential for the empire or for California as a whole.
Yeah, I'm in California and I love us, but I also recognize us. You know, it's like I know my family's a little bit crazy, but I love them. And I also recognize that because I'm part of my family, other people view me as crazy for some of the stuff I say. Like I drank the Kool-Aid. I just know how to talk to conservatives. I still believe in some of the what's considered wild, outlandish ideas. I just think us ripping each other apart is not productive. And also, if we're gonna secede peacefully, how the hell are you gonna do that without votes? And how are you gonna get votes without talking to each other?
Yeah. Well, speaking of votes, I had a question for you. It's funny how you don't really need to come up with very many questions because the conversation just happens. But I did write down two, and one of them
Please.
was, obviously, so it's November 8th, and the election was 3 days ago, and
Yep.
the Trump will be coming back in. How will you guys handle yourselves differently from how you handled the first Trump administration? I was somewhat watching you guys before 2020, but not very closely. So what's going to be different? How's it going to be different for you from how it was in the 2018 era?
This is possibly the best time ever for CALexit. We feel that we almost achieved full secession in 2016, 2017. I know some people find that outlandish, but we were doing very well. And then they said Russia hacked the election. And so Russia's behind CALexit. And Rachel Maddow came on television and showed my face, but didn't mention my name, but had my face up the entire show and talked about how Russia's behind CALexit. Everybody believed that. Now we know for I think it's only been out like 2 years that the Durham report came out and proved that the Russia collusion was a hoax. So we had this specter on us of Russia hacked the whole election, so they probably hacked all of CALexit, which wasn't true, but Californians were hysterical when Trump was elected. Hysterical. I'm not saying that to be funny. They lost their damn mind. I was there in the park the day they won. Trump won. Everybody was crying. You could hear it from 2 blocks out. And so they kind of lost it. And then they said, well, you don't need to CALexit, right? We'll resist Trump because we can resist Trump because he's a fluke. Why is he a fluke? Because Russia put him in office. You heard a lot of things in California like he doesn't have a majority of support. Russia put him into office. Only a small minority of the country supports him, maybe like 40%, and then Russia inflated those numbers. He doesn't really have popular backing. Nobody likes him. Something happened. He rigged it, etc. From what I've seen with a couple LA Times editorials, and I've been watching CNN, MSNBC, and a lot of liberals comment that idea is gone. That's gone. Trump won the popular vote. It's 8 years later. He's back. For the first time ever, I'm hearing liberals say, it's almost like this is America's guy. Like Like, this is what the American people wanted. They would not admit that in 2017. Not, didn't happen, didn't happen. Now, for the first time, they're going, what if America likes this guy and likes what he's about, and it wasn't a fluke, and this really is the country we're attached to? That was what we were trying to convince people in 2017, that America elected this guy. And we told people, because Californians were saying, well, Hillary won the popular vote, Hillary won the popular vote, so Trump doesn't really represent America. And we said, Hillary won the popular vote only by California alone. That's a fact. So outside of California, that means over half of your fellow Americans like Trump.
Well, I think what really they were saying is that they didn't like having a president in diapers, or they didn't like having a president that was changing her accent every 15 minutes and couldn't put a sentence together and had to have
Uh, I'm
a
speaking from the California perspective.
yeah,
That's
I think it's just when the U.S. empire is designed to take the two most unpopular people in the country and give you a choice between those two, and stuck with those people feel like they're stuck with those two choices, so they'll pick Kodos over Kang, right?
I understand what you're saying, but that's not the way that it works in the California mind. So I get what you're saying because I work with conservatives a lot. But you got to understand, in California, the Supreme Court undid Roe v. Wade, but all they did was kick it back to the states. And in California, a lot of us Californians were like, well, we're never going to get rid of abortion. This is California. We'll fight and die for that. So we're fine. But most of the state did not feel that way. Although it was kicked back to the states, they felt, oh, it's gone across all of America. You'd heard people
Yeah,
say,
it's
I
because
have less rights today than my daughter or something in the 70s.
yeah, people just can't process the idea that federal stuff often does not affect the states. And that's what's still good about the empire, is that a lot of it really is not dealt with by the feds.
To the degree that it's not. And there's a California, that's the crazy thing, is like Californians love resisting federal authority. They love it. They were resisting federal authority on marijuana legalization during Obama. Um, Harris famously was challenging the Obama administration for money for California homeowners. California was the only one doing that. We also obviously said we're not going to listen to Donald Trump during COVID, while our governor went on television and said, we're a nation state. And by the way, I bought all the stuff from China independently of America. We don't need America. We're a nation state, and we're good. But then there was also Biden. Biden had some policy on reopening COVID, and California said, no, we're not going to do that. And we're getting rid of the mask mandates. We don't care what you say. We've also had that opinion on immigration with Trump. So what most people aren't aware of is that we did this during Obama. We did this during Biden. We really did it during Trump. You say secession to Californians, they're like, oh my God, the Confederacy was so disgusting. Slavery's wrong. You say, yeah, but this is California. We're kind of a nation. Do you really need someone telling us what to do? Can't we, shouldn't we really do our own thing? Oh yeah, bro. I totally am down with that. It's the same thing.
The
They don't
word,
know that.
yeah, the word independence generally works better, although my problem with it is that it people just think when you talk about independence, they think you're talking about helping handicapped people get to their
Exactly.
scooter or something. They don't know you're
Yep.
even talking about something political. So
Yep.
it's
Yep.
almost too innocuous. And then a secession, of course, is a word that is too inflammatory in a way, but secession seems like is good for clarity and getting attention, and independence is good for being mild and talking to your to your political opponents. But I did
We
have
found that out. Yeah,
I had another question
absolutely.
for you. Um, and so now that, my expectation would be that the Texas independence movement will lose a lot of steam with the Republicans being in charge everywhere in the empire, well, at the federal level, it seems like, and that's a whole problem in itself. But the setting that aside for a second, th this may put you guys on point, right? So you will be the ones who are in the lead on independence in the United States, possibly over the next 4 years. So this could be a real thing. What you're saying is true. You know, California really could secede in the next 4 years. It wouldn't actually surprise me that much. So w when if and when that happens, you are going to have counties that are going to try to leave California. How do you advocate Sacramento should deal with that? The capital is in Sacramento, is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that. We've reached out to the Jefferson movement. Now, the Jefferson movement is the top fifth, northern fifth of California counties, and they've wanted to become their own state or join Idaho. We've reached out to them and said, hey, your best bet to make what you want to have happen is to back us, because leaving America would be such a big move that people would take your movement seriously and say, well, we got to have a vote on this too. They've responded by not talking to us at all and thinking that we're treasonous bastards. But we tried to explain that to them. Here's the thing, though. I'm not trying to be mean, but under the Constitution, counties don't exist. They have no legal right to ask for anything. States exist, and states create counties. So if a state wanted to leave legally, it could do that. Um, but the counties can't leave and they can't demand a vote because they're not legally recognized outside of the state. Counties don't exist at the federal level, so they have no legal right to kind of petition for anything. That's the harsh truth of it.
Uh, so what would you do if a county pulled a Catalonia? What would you suggest doing if a county pulled a Catalonia and held an unsanctioned referendum? And I think there have been some there was a referendum in Oregon, wasn't there, along these lines?
Yeah,
In a county.
we're all for voting. We would never ever do what Spain did, where they used SWAT teams to go after people who just wanted to have a democratic, peaceful vote. And they had police officers with batons crack grandmothers' heads open. I saw the photos, and raid voting ballot things with SWAT teams with fully automatic weapons in full SWAT gear with guns pointed in people's faces. No, that's disgusting. That's what you see in the worst regimes. And yet Spain did it. America didn't criticize them. Neither did England. Neither did France. Neither did NATO. For all their loving democracy, they could say absolutely nothing about what Spain did. We would never do that. You could have your vote. I'm just saying it wouldn't have any domestic standing and it wouldn't have any international standing. So, domestic standing, you'd have to be a state. International standing, you'd have to be a recognized government or sub-government unit that got over 51% of the vote. There, the fact is also that legally, if Jefferson wanted to leave, the way the Constitution works is they can't leave unless the majority of the state they want to leave says that's okay. That's the way that it works. So if they wanted to go, they could have a vote. Absolutely. It would have no domestic standing and no international standing, which is why we've told them we would like you to work with us. Because if you work with us and you help us get CALexit on the ballot, then we are politically beholden to you. Then as CALexit happens, we would have to keep our political promise. That's the only thing you have. But certainly have a vote, a bunch. The Chiapas region in Mexico had a bunch of votes. They had little ballot boxes in different indigenous towns and they had a vote and they tallied it up and it went nowhere because it had no international standing or domestic standing. But yeah, have a vote. Absolutely. We would never stop anybody from voting.
Yo voy a hablar con John Bush o Charan. Uh, ¿Correcto? ¿Yo hablo correcto?
Uh, yeah, I'm understanding a little bit of that. So George W. Bush and Sharon from Israel.
I'm going to talk with John Bush. I'm going to interview John Bush about Charan this week,
Oh, nice.
but
That's
I
going to be awesome.
probably didn't say that correctly.
No, but I think you did. I'm third generation. I'm third generation. So for la gente, no me habla bueno porque no practicar bastante. Generación tres, mexicano de Durango, Estado. Uh, prefiere hablar solamente en inglés por los discussions políticos. I'm third gen. I speak a mixture of Spanish. So
Spanglish.
yes,
Yeah, and
unfortunately,
don't worry,
I'm
I'm
more
not
worried.
gonna.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'm not gonna try to interview him in Spanish. But
Yeah.
the he's been there. I don't know if you've been following the situation in Charan, and so it's a part of Mexico that is de facto separated from the Mexican system in sort of a state of anarchy for the last, I don't know, 5 or 10 years. It's not quite anarchy. Nothing's ever really anarchy for more than a few days usually. But they have experimented with a new political system that has never existed on Earth before, to my knowledge, at least well documented. So we'll be talking about that. And yeah, Mexico, there's a lot to learn. But yeah, the Chiapas, those folks are really interesting too. But yeah, I kind of interrupted you though. But what were you saying? What was the rest of what you were saying about Chiapas?
Oh, just that, you can have votes, but they don't necessarily go anywhere. So the Chiapas had votes, they had independent voting, but the way that they didn't have international observers. It wasn't really found through the system. Also, they didn't really have standing, so it didn't go anywhere. So have a vote. Of course, we would say vote. We would never behave like Spain. I'm just saying that just because you have a vote doesn't necessarily mean that anything's going to happen. Like there's the California 51st state. That's another group out here in California. They're conservative and they want to break off California and have the conservative part become a state. Same concept. They're walking around and they're having these conferences and saying, well, we stood in front of a public building and issued a declaration. That's great, man. That means nothing underneath the law. You have to have a majority of the state allow you to leave, and only states can petition the federal government because only states are recognized by the federal government. Counties just don't have standing anywhere. But they can have a vote. That's the law. A lot of people don't know that. Just like a lot of Californians didn't know that Texas versus White is a real law and that it does say you can secede with consent of the states.
Yeah. Yeah, and Jacobson versus Massachusetts, I guess, overruled, indirectly overruled Texas versus White. So
Well, that is an interpretation that could be true, but we won't know till the Supreme Court looks at it. I'd also question that because typically when a Supreme Court ruling comes out that undoes previous rulings, they have to announce it. And they didn't in that one, which makes me think how much we're getting into high detailed
yeah,
legal questions. And frankly, under the Constitution, the only person that gets to finally decide is the Supreme Court. I would point out that even when you get to the Supreme Court, you have justices who completely differ on what the Constitution says. You also have this Supreme Court, which has undone precedents going back 50 to 60 years from previous Supreme Courts. So just because a court in the past said something, you just don't know until the current Supreme Court that's in power rules. Like we don't know exactly what the threshold for consent is. Um, Erwin Chemerinsky, who's the top constitutional scholar here in California, said a simple majority vote of Congress could work. That would line up with the Brexit vote of 52%. It could be a convention of the states. We're not sure. And maybe Pennsylvania does undo it. But you'd have to have the Supreme Court say so. And the other thing is also its interpretation. So Texans are not Californians. They're not. They're not. Um, Texans are used to this idea of we were an independent country, and when we joined the union, we left an option to leave again, and we have an inherent right to leave. That idea goes nowhere in California. Like they don't know we were an independent nation for 10 years. And when you say that, it just goes nowhere. So you have to say, oh, there secretly is a legal process in the Constitution to do this. Then Californians start waking up and going, oh, okay. So it's a legal question. It's also a marketing question. I've talked with Daniel about this a lot. There's ways to market things in California that don't work in Texas. There's ways to market things in Texas that don't work in California, don't work in New Hampshire, don't work in Vermont, et cetera, Louisiana, Florida. Every market's different. And sometimes that goes down into the legal path to secession that you may want to pursue. The other thing here is in California is we've already proved that we could get this vote on the ballot. So California is one of, I think, 3 states in the union that has the initiative process where the public can actually put something on the ballot and it goes directly to the voters. 47 states don't have that, including Texas. So there's different options. And we've already filed 3 initiatives approved by Kamala Harris and Javier Becerra, who works for Biden, and then also Kathleen Keenely. And we just filed a 4th one. Oh, that's breaking news. We filed our new initiative. But the previously were approved by 3 California attorneys generals. So we have a legal path here. Californians are comfortable with it. And we've gotten 3 California attorney generals to recognize that Texas versus White does say consent to the states. So I'll chalk it up to a marketing decision more than an actual legal one, although there is some legal interpretation there.
Marcus, I want to warn you there. I've got a 3-minute warning coming up here now. So anything important that you haven't gotten a chance to say?
Please hook us up with the breakaway region in Mexico. We are having a global summit, February 2025. We had a great summit before. A lot of independence movements like New Hampshire went, and everybody seemed to love it and say they wanted to go to the second one. So we're planning a second one in February 2025. We originally had about 10 groups agree for the first one to go to the second one. We've now gained 4 commitments and 8 more contacts. And so we have 4 different African burgeoning nations who are going to be going to our conference, Ogoniland, I think, a few others. We're also working out with Biafra and Amazonia and Somaliland and the Zulu. It's going to be a big conference. Nobody's doing this kind of thing anywhere on Earth. So we're going to be announcing in February that we have our initiative filed to secede, and we're going to be announcing it in front of 10, we hope 1/5 of American states, and maybe about 30 different breakaway nations around the world. It'll be one of the largest conferences of its kind in 10 years, February 2025. CALexitnow.org, CALexitnow.org, CALexitnow.org. You can find out all the information
Oh
and all the
no, no,
contact
no, no.
information.
People will only remember it if I sing it.
Oh, please sing. I'm gonna shut
Cal
up and sing. You sing.
CalExit.org.
You have a beautiful voice, but it was calexitnow.org.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
CalExitNow.org.
CalExitnow.org.
All right.
Okay, that's it. We crushed it. They're
I
definitely going to
can't I
remember
can't
now.
think and sing at the same time. I apologize. But yeah, and then we're at NHexit.org. You can follow this podcast at ridleyreport.com. And thank you as always for your time, Marcus. Actually, you've still got a full minute left, so I'll let you burn it up if you want.
Uh, Send us the links. We will publicize it. Please, if you could have your next interviewer contact us or get us the contact for that independence movement. If you know any independence movements in America or around the world, we want to know. There isn't conferences for these groups we've been finding because the UN is biased for existing nations, not independence movements. We've actually covered some articles in depth on that. So please hook us up with contacts. We want everyone to go. CalExitNow.org.
Oh boy, this is going to be stuck in people's brains until they can't get it out. All right, signing off. Thanks, Marcus.
All right, send us the links. Thanks,
Yeah,
brother. I'll talk to you
it'll
soon.
be a few days before it airs, probably.
All good. All good. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, take care. Good luck out there.
Okay, you too.
Do you value your privacy? Want hardware that works? Get Linux at New Hampshire's very own thingpenguin.com.